Damon here from NLP Gym. My message today is break your own rules. What do I mean by that? I come across people from time to time who seem to have a lot of rules. Rules for themselves, rules for other people, sometimes rules for both. And to me that's different than boundaries. It's good to have good boundaries. It's good to know what your boundaries are. What I mean by rules is it's more about they're consulting their rule book that they've made for themselves. And what it comes out to look like to me is people who are parenting themselves. I'm very well aware of this because I did this myself, and I think everyone goes through some developmental stage where they spend a lot of time in this phase, or some people just move right through it. For me, it came whenever I moved to college. I moved out of my home, moved to a city, and I flunked 2 classes. I was out partying too much, and I needed to do something different. So I started parenting myself. I started making rules for myself. And a lot of us do this. And that really served me through my college years. When I got out of college, I started to stagnate. I started to realize that a rule-driven life is really not living. We have to parent ourselves up to a certain extent. But then if we're parenting ourselves, that means that we are also being a kid at the same time. So we're 2 parts. And NLP is all about integrating parts, especially conflicts. And I kind of fell into a depression about a year after I graduated college. My professor who introduced me to NLP, I called him up and I said, I'm not doing well. I don't have health insurance. Can you help me out? He told me to come in. He wouldn't charge me money because he didn't believe, well, he didn't need my money, but he also didn't believe in a free service, so he required that I give money to charity or I do community service hours, which was a wonderful thing. And in one session, I'm not kidding, one session, I walked in depressed. I'd been depressed for quite a while. I walked out, I was fine. I wasn't depressed at all. I was happy. And it was the most amazing thing. What happened in that session was I integrated those 2 parts. I integrated child and parent and became one complete whole. And that's about the time that I started really getting clear about my values. And the clearer you are about your values, the more you start to live a purpose-driven life. A purpose-driven life or a values-driven life over a rules-driven life. Spending the rest of your life parenting yourself is not that pleasant. And what will happen a lot of times is you'll sabotage yourself because the child in you wants to get out and play. The child in you wants to get out and have a good time. The child in you wants to, while the parent's back is turned, go do something mischievous. So integrate those 2. And again, I can't say this enough times, get clear about your values and start living that purpose-driven life. And your outcomes, know what your outcomes are, know what value those outcomes serve, so that you might have to make changes to your outcomes. I've had it happen many times. The closer I get to an outcome, the more I realize that it's not going to serve the value that originally I thought it would. So then I just changed my outcome. That only can come from really being clear about what your values are. And then there are principles. And principles, for example, are the presuppositions in NLP. The meaning of a communication is the response it gets. All behavior originates with a positive intent. These are principles, and principles are intentionally vague. They're broad, so that they're kind of like theorems in geometry. If you remember in algebra or geometry, they cannot be proven and they cannot be disproved, which makes them very flexible, very general, very broad, and they have many, many applications, which is much better than rules, because rules, you're either breaking them or you're following them. There's no in between. With principles, they're more flexible and they can stay with you, and they're sort of like universal truth. It's much better to live according to your principles, according to your values, rather than just rules. Not saying get rid of all of your rules. I still have rules for myself. You probably always will. It's probably a good thing. You don't want to be a nihilist. I wouldn't recommend that. So focus on your principles, focus on your values, and naturally out of that you start to live what feels like a purpose-driven life. And if that's what your life feels like, if you feel like you're living a life of purpose, your life will be much, much more enjoyable that way, rather than trying to parent yourself. Again, check us out at nlp-gym.com. I'm always updating posts. I'm always updating the blog. And we have some great trainers coming up. And we have our practitioner training coming up this fall of 2016. So keep watching. Take care.